I found a recipe book in the kitchen. Inside here are fantastic recipes for delicious treats. Most of them are cakes. Look at this one, famous chocolate fudge pudding. And here's a favourite of mine, amazingly moist American chocolate cake. And I put a little note here to say it easily makes 24 pieces of cake. But what if I don't want 24 pieces? What if I only want 12? How would I work it out? I've made a table of all the ingredients and the proportions that I need for 24 pieces of cake. Let's work out the recipe for 12 pieces of cake. Because everything's in proportion, I use half the amount of ingredients. Well, an examiner might not be that nice to you. What if we need a recipe for 36? How could we do that from our recipe of 24? Well, because we've worked out a recipe for 12, if we add these two recipes together, we will have a recipe for 36 pieces. So if we start with a recipe for 24, work out a recipe for 12, and then add these two together, that'd be a smart way to do it. Another way to do it would be to divide this recipe by 2 and then multiply it by 3. So 2 cups is 1 cup for 12 and then 3 cups for 36. Let's fill in this recipe. Here we have the recipe for 36 pieces of delicious chocolate cake. Let's find another delicious recipe. Here we have a recipe for a simple sponge mix. This will make enough slices of cake for 6 helpings. What amount of each ingredient would I need if I want to make a cake for 15 people? It's going to be a big cake. Well, here we have our recipe for 6 and we want to get to 15. So if I start with a recipe for 6, I could half it to get a recipe for 3 and then multiply it by 5 to get a recipe for 15. I could start with my recipe for 6, multiply by 5 to get a recipe for 30, then divide that by 2 to get a recipe for 15. Here's another way. I could start with my recipe for 6 that I've got here, double it or add it again, and then add a recipe for 3. 6 plus 6 plus 3 makes 15. You may come up with another method, and each of these methods are correct. Pause the video, give it a go for yourself, and then press play to check your answer. Here is a recipe for 15 slices of simple sponge mix. I found a recipe that makes 8 pancakes, but I want to make as many pancakes as possible. I've checked in the fridge and I have 1.5 litres of milk. I've got plenty of all the other ingredients, so how many pancakes can I make? Pause the video to try for yourself, then come back and check your answer. Well, first of all, let's check the measurements that we've used here. I've got 1.5 litres, but the measurements of milk are either in pints or millilitres. Well, I know that 1 litre is 1,000 millilitres. So this is the same as 1,500 millilitres of milk. Now the question is, how many lots of 300 millilitres, which makes 8 pancakes, goes into 1,500 millilitres? Well, the answer is 5. So I can have 5 times this recipe. This recipe makes 8. So with 1,500 millilitres of milk, I can make 8 multiplied by 5, which is 40 pancakes. Delicious.